It's lunchtime. It's lunchtime. Chat, let me know if I sound bad. Yesterday I sounded bad, and it had something to do with my audio chain. So if I sound bad, you have to tell me. That's a lot. Matt, what's up? How are you?
I am doing very well. I had a couple of very special deliveries today. I'm gonna wait until the certain segment of our show that we have planned for it. But as you can see, oh, I had sandwiches delivered to my abode, and it was quite lovely. I am waiting to break them open until that certain portion of our show. But especially when I say I have consumed very little today in preparation for this wonderfulness.
We're putting the lunch in lunch and lore. I
We
had
are
to do.
not. Our people are putting the lunch in lunch and lore. We bring the lore, you bring the lunch,
They're the
and we
we.
definitely had members of our community who delivered. It was quite good.
Yeah, it's kind of mind blowing. Um, so thank you so much for feeding the lunch. Damn. We're working on
Using the lunch to feed the lore.
exactly. We are lore machines powered by lunch. We're working on having an actual format for this. None of the graphics are ready whatsoever. But let's go ahead and start. Let's do news, Casters and Castles news. So the main thing that I have is that we have an upcoming show this Saturday, 1 p.m. Pacific. I think it's already on the calendar and I've scheduled it. It is a special episode of Ioth Academy focusing on Alexander, Mason's original and now villainous character. I'm going to be doing a lot of plot stuff in that. So if you have been like waiting for the filler arc to end, check that one out. It's going to be very good. And then Sunday, the 24th of March in the year 2024, we should be doing Descent into Avernus episode 45. It's currently slated for 9 a.m., but it's probably getting bumped up to 5 p.m. So be on the lookout for
Pacific Standard Time.
Yes, thank you. Be sure to check our Discord for up-to-date information at all times. Plug. I think
I will be updating it as soon as I know.
it's never your fault. I think that's all the major news that I have. Aside from that, we're beginning turn 5 of War of the Sun. And so I don't have like a War of the Sun report. I think I'm going to make that a feature of the Ioth Academy after show. But I think that's a good idea, right? Like Legs has sort of done it. Yeah, we should do that. What about you? Do you have any Castles and Castles related news?
I mean, I would say that you handled the bulk of it. Just for being a part of the Coriander show, we are into our. It's been 1, 2. This is now the 3rd arc that we have done with a glorious cast of characters. We had a little bit of a snafu this week in making sure that we could continue on week after week. However, it will not continue. We are going to be meeting ourselves next Tuesday, barring any objections that aren't my fault. And we are going to be continuing the adventure to find out exactly what is going to happen with John Asena. And they're two. Look, I'm not saying they're the tunnel snakes, but it really seems like they're the tunnel snakes at this point. And we're going to be doing some pretty, are we the baddies kind of stuff without actually being the baddies, but who knows? I'm really excited to continue on our adventure with these guest stars. It's been phenomenal bringing in all of the wonderful friends of the show to be able to participate either on being a part of the stream or helping make the magic happen. So we're going to see what ends up happening with this adventure. And who knows, maybe we're going to be switching up how we do things ever so slightly. I've been telling Joe he needs to take a little more time to let that brain of his actually, be able to not corrode. What's the other word? The anti-corrode.
Percolate.
To soak up the juices of glorious storytelling.
Story juice. Speaking of story juice, for some goddamn reason, the next segment that we're going to do, and I think at some point I'm going to have there's going to be like graphics. It'll highlight what section we're on. Maybe there'll be a little timer that tells you like how long it's been. I'll use that like stream split timer you use for speed runs so you can see how long each section takes. Stuff like that. Promise. The next thing that we always want to do is questions from chat. So I haven't been like posting this on Discord and saying, don't forget to bring your questions. Because I have the mind of a jellyfish. But if you have questions, please feel free to drop them in chat. And I have two lore stream loots cards that have been played that are in queue that I can just tell everyone about. One is an article on magic trees, which I have started. There's an outline of that. And the other is a lore card for Ardelane, the court wizard of Galadron at the time of the fall of the line of Magnan. So lore to come that will be worked on. Probably not on this show because we're going to have a different focus for the time being. But those are a couple of things that are going to be worked on. So please feel free to ask lore questions about any of our shows or intellectual properties whatsoever. But given that I didn't actually prime anyone for this, I figure we're going to move on.
We're going to give everyone just a moment because we have sandwiches that were brought forth into this abode. We are now doing an unwrapping of sandwich number one.
Sandwich unboxing.
This is a sandwich unboxing. This was delivered by Grinder from our very own Mama Shimada. Thank you very much. I have no idea what's in this. It could be pork sandwiches. We have no idea what is within this glorious. Oh my god, this is so big. How am I gonna eat all these sandwiches? I'm literally gonna have sandwiches from this until next show. They're so vast. Oh my gosh, I'm unwrapping currently. Let me see if I can try and make sure people can. There we go. All right, ripping nope. Oh my goodness, that looks amazing. By the way, this smells great in here. I have a very small room that I do this out of, and these sandwiches are, as Joe said, percolating and just wallowing in the juices of their own glory. And so this looks like we've got some tomato, various amounts of meat. It looks like we've got turkey, ham, provolone. That is some kind of sandwich meat. I think some sort of sausage or bologna, and lots of different spices and assorted sauces. That looks delicious. Should I take a bite of this one or should I unbox the next one? How should this go? How would everyone prefer seeing these sandwiches lunched?
I think you should take a bite of it. That's
I'm gonna take a bite.
I'll let chat weigh in, but I think you should take a bite of it.
I'm keeping an eye on things to see what chat prefers, but until I see otherwise, I will go ahead and break off a bit of that Kit Kat sandwich.
We're receiving requests in chat for a sandwich cam, so we're gonna have to upgrade your setup so that you have like a desk cam. You know?
Oh, like a dedicated sandwich cam.
I mean,
okay,
if you were ever streaming gaming, you know, some people stream their keyboard and mouse to show how much of an operator they are, how fast they.
I am not an operator, but I will consume sandwich. There we go.
Heavy weapons guy.
Oh man, this is a squishy sandwich. Here we go.
Flip it upside down. Oh. Upside down is the tech.
Upside down?
Yes. Because the sandwich is you always eat a sandwich upside down. The top piece of bread is thicker.
You're trolling me.
No. I'm dead serious. The top piece of bread is thicker. And usually when you get the sandwich, it's been sitting depending on how long it took to deliver. So all the juices and stuff run down to make the bottom weaker.
On the bottom.
So you flip it and you put the bottom on top.
Okay, so you mean not vertical. You're just saying flip the thing.
No, who would eat it like that?
That's why I thought, I was like, what the hell are you talking about? I've never eaten a sandwich like a taco before.
Just barrel roll the sandwich, all right? A 180-degree barrel roll. There you go.
Oh my god.
Same with burgers, by the way. Eat your burger upside down. You'll thank me for it.
I'm so wet, and I love it. This is great.
All right, well, that's been our show, everyone. Thank you so much. Yeah, maybe that can be like a TikTok challenge or something, is eating the sandwich vertically.
Oh, I could do it. I totally could do it. I just need to train. Okay, so I'll be periodically muting myself so no one has to like listen to me eat a sandwich.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't move past the sandwich portion too quickly. Echofoot cannot currently be here on stream and enjoy the fruits of their labors. But mate, while I vamp for sandwich, you need to go check your front door because it was your sandwich was supposed to be delivered by Echofoot.
The dog is popping off right now, so I think that it's probably happening right now.
This is a good chance to do that. While you do that, I will regale everyone as to the gloriousness of Echo's sandwich here. We have a bag from, look at that, Jersey Mike's. Loveliness. This is the one that Mama Shimada was talking about doing for next time. This is probably where the gluten-free sandwich came from, because there's not many gluten-free sandwich options apparently in our area, which is a bummer. But Ooh, look at this. Yummy. How lovely that looks. That one actually says GF. I think it's either gluten-free or like my girlfriend. I'm not really sure. But says either gluten-free Callie or gluten-free cow. So hopefully it's not cauliflower. That would be a tough, a tough sandwich to eat. Let's see here. What this one looks like. We have a sub above. I might have gotten your sandwich. Did it get delivered to you?
No, it's actually the pool guy.
Is it the pool guy? Okay, well, this one says GF, which I assume is gluten free. And it's been
Yes,
cut into four pieces.
I believe that is a gluten-free sandwich.
So, if you want it, come and get it, mate.
All right, not now, but we'll talk later. Thank you for the sandwich.
This concludes the sandwich portion of Lunch and Lore. If anybody has any questions they were able to come with. Yes, exactly. Hopefully I've bought enough time for everyone to think of their lovely questions, but we'll answer them as time goes on. Oh, well, there we go. They were too enamored with the consuming of sandwiches.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you very much to both Mama Shimada and to Echofoot. I honestly can't believe you did this. This is way too great. Hey, mate, we have a sheet that we did some good planning for today. Considering you were talking about some changes that you want to make to War of the Sun East, I think it would only be appropriate that we kind of officially discuss what's going to be happening with your plans for War of the Sun West. Maybe a little bit.
Yes. Okay. And Gorm is in chat, which is good because I don't know if I've talked with Gorm about this yet, and Gorm has been helping me with some infrastructure stuff for War of the Sun.
Ooh.
So, War of the Sun, which is the Crowns and Castles realm grand strategy game going on in the background of Ioth Academy. It's basically NPCing a bunch of the realms off of my brain so that when the politics of the world are going on, it's a game that other people are playing around me instead of me trying to think of it. One thing I want to point out, anytime that you're like, why didn't Archmage Elnow do X, Y, or Z? The answer is usually because the Dungeon Master is a dumbass. Or the Dungeon Master was out of RAM, that's why. It's not because they made a bad choice. It's because the Dungeon Master was out of RAM, and now I have to justify it in world. So War of the Sun was originally going to be a sequel campaign to Ioth Academy. After the kids graduate from school, or the school explodes, they all have these roles that take them into the wider world, and they start taking a bigger hand on the world stage. Athalor with regards to Onderud, Garnet either as Void Mistress of all evil or some sort of trying to becoming the Priest King of Brontha. Mason's work with Sventisco, Alexander's work as the big bad guy, stuff like that. But now War of the Sun is this grand strategy game happening in the background that's determining who's getting attacked and all these other plot things going on. It is also a beta test or an alpha test for War in the West, which is we're going to run as a prequel to the next official Anakra campaign, which is Irelek. I've talked a little bit about Irelek. Irelek is the monastery. We talked about it last session, and one of the reasons we talked about it, one, is because Matt and I have wanted to do more development in the West for literal years. All of our adventures so far have happened on stream, have either happened in the East or in Tamrian. And there's a lot of really, really cool stuff in the West that I want to go into. We had Torn Lands, which technically took place in the West. There was one stream and then the project died. So that does not count and it never actually happened. So I want to focus Lunch and Lore, at least for the time being, on developing the West and preparing for that event. Because the idea is, instead of running War in the West in parallel with Irelek, we're going to set aside a time frame of history all the way up to the beginning of the Irelek campaign. And Matt and I have to decide how far back we want to go from there. One, because how much time are we going to give to the, batshit whims of players to interfere with history? And two, how long do we want the game to go? Because War in the West,
most developers will start a game and they will like continue on chronologically with their story. We, however, started our world and said, what if we just keep going back? Eventually, we'll hit rock bottom. And by that, I mean the bedrock of time. And apparently, all of our games are going to take place in the Dawn era. But for now, hopefully, this is as far back as we put ourselves.
Well, I mean, the good news is I think the earliest campaign right now, aside from some possible prequels or one-shots I may or may not have run, the earliest is Ioth Academy. That's the furthest back we've gone in the timeline to actually play on screen, because that's during the Demonic Imperium, which we've always treated as backstory in almost everything we do. And yet now half the stuff we're doing is during the Demonic Imperium. But Irelec takes place, it's post-Demonic Imperium, right? Because it's near the end of the first day.
It's basically, it's funny, War of the Sun, because it's basically what Irelec is it's War of the Sun East. It's basically taking place like towards the tail ends, like, just before the Apotheosis of Ramius. Whereas, I don't know, did you want to tell the people when we're thinking of putting War of the Sun West?
Well, I mean, that's not, we were going to do it during the Demonic Imperium. But actually, that's another thing I got to bring up. And sorry to spring this on you right now. We got to look at the whole timeline, because Irelec could happen a lot sooner. Everything could happen a lot sooner because of the crap, the nonsense that I have stirred up in Ioth Academy by getting into the Void Mask Enjoyers, by introducing Irelec in the first place. I have stirred up some stuff that, unless there's a good reason for things to not boil over, like Garnet has a Void Mask, but she is not a member of the Vox Anonymous. What is going to happen with that? Garnet is not exactly the patient type. So if she doesn't get herself killed, okay, so she joins them. Great. That can be a state of affairs that lasts for hundreds and hundreds of years, right? But if she decides she's going to try to hunt them down, she's very persistent. So either she needs to die, or her hunt, her pursuit is going to potentially accelerate things, which means Irelec would happen sooner. So we will, I'll talk about that offline with you, because there's too many spoilers involved with that. And the other thing is
quite a lot.
The other thing is a Shardalon, because a Shardalon being loose was never part of my plans. That was a Bren original. So
I'm well aware.
I feel like the Eisen Cyronox timeline could, especially given what's happened with the Book of Dawn, because the quest for the Book of Dawn now is in with the Brennan Sideshow campaign is we need to get the Book of Dawn to put Shardalon back. But spoilers, everyone. Hoot, put it on mute. Spoilers for Ioth Academy coming up right now. If you haven't made it this far, spoilers. They blew up the Book of Dawn. So whatever was going to happen, like whatever they're going to find, whatever the quest for the Book of Dawn is going to find, it's probably not the original Book of Dawn. Either it's, oh shit, there is nothing.
More spoilers, by the way.
Yeah. Either there's like, it just isn't there, and now they're up a certain creek without a certain implement, or there is a new Book of Dawn that someone like Athalor has created or something, or the Cryans have created, and it's got its own shit going on because of Cryas's secret plot lines I'm not going to talk about. So either way, you see how the Ashardalon timeline could lead to the original Chown timeline very quickly.
Well, because I was going to say, like, I thought that they were supposed to be the same entity, but are we saying that now we are actually going to split them up? Because
No, I'm saying that, like, if they don't have a way to deal with Ashardalon, then the Eisen Cyronox solution may be deployed. And if it's deployed now, that could cause all sorts of stuff. Like, again, these are things that would canonically have happened way later in the timeline that could be accelerated. Later. The War of the Winds, for example, the War of the Winds isn't supposed to happen until near the end of the first day, but Boreas is dead.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of things happening. I have unleashed players upon the timeline and a lot of my pet favorite things, and I have caused a continuity snarl that will take us a long time. But the good news is, anything that hasn't actually happened yet, hasn't actually happened yet. So we still have space.
Yes, absolutely.
Also, if
Um,
the Erlech timeline happens sooner, then we can have more cameos. Go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say, I think that like you said, we really do need to sit down and you know, eradicate,
Damage
decimate, and
control.
absolutely rechange this timeline. But I mean, that's one of the things that happens. I mean, we've both been, in both of our ventures that we've done on Caches and Castles, been very clear that the gods, while being oftentimes near, omniscient, are not omnipotent, and they are not indestructible. And if you throw something that literally could possibly, even if it's very rarely could happen, to be killed in front of players, they're probably going to kill it. That's just what happens. So that's just the nature of how things are, which is why most things in Anakra tend to, hide in their layers. Because if you go into this thing's lair, you're not going to kill it. At least you need to really
Mhm.
up the ante, because their power just increases by multitudes, by magnitudes when they're on their home turf. But when they're
Yeah.
rolling around, picking on a bunch of teenagers at a school, it's not a, not a great place for them to be.
No, do not go to the school full of high level mages and weird magical nonsense that can break the rules if you want to live.
But I think that kind of comes down again to making sure that, are you making a decision that that character would make, or are you a DM with a human brain trying to make sure it works in that moment? Because I mean, obviously, there shouldn't be at this point, especially if we bump up the timeline for Erelec, it could be a little more understanding, because I'm sure it's happened few and far between. But especially after Arakura gets thwacked, every single thing under the sun should be like, I probably shouldn't run around antagonizing powerful things, because
Mhm.
I could very likely get got. So
Mhm.
I think moving some things around a bit might be a good idea.
I think we might
Absolutely.
have to. Um, Now the question, of course, in we're getting back to the Western continents. I promise. There are a couple of things that are semi anchored in time. One of them is the date of the Iath Academy campaign, 6863, during the Demonic Imperium. I think that's right. I'll have to double check.
Wait, are we anchoring that in time?
I mean, it's been on camera, right? There's things that have there's soft retcons and there's hard retcons.
Camera.
If it's been
Yeah.
on stream and we're gonna change
Uh,
it, in my mind, that's a hard retcon.
hmm.
If it hasn't been mentioned yet and it exists in our brain of brains, that's a soft retcon. Basically, if nobody else knows it's a retcon, that's different than flat out saying, okay, this entire campaign actually didn't happen this way. Um,
Yeah.
so we have this campaign, and then we have Book of Dawn Iath Academy, which takes place post Apotheosis of Ramius. So we have to figure out where this is all going to fall in there. But War in the West is definitely currently definitely going to take place during the Demonic Imperium in the
Yes,
Western
absolutely.
continents. So there's going to be a ton of Iron Empire. There's going to be a ton of designer cities, and a lot of these are things that have always been backstory. Like, what campaigns have we run in the West? Catastrophic Elements, and that was all off screen.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, if you're talking about off screen, there's been quite a few, but like, no, on screen, no.
Mm-hmm. But even off screen, those things help comprise our head canon. It may not be,
Absolutely.
semi solid until it makes it onto Casters and Castles or World Anvil. But like we've explored the Western continents off camera, but it's always been in that post Iron Empire era. And a lot of the
Yeah, it
cultures.
was
Go ahead.
way back in the timeline. Like, for what we're talking
Mm-hmm.
about, the stuff that has been done, that we've done in headcanon
Mm-hmm.
is second. Like, it's a whole other
It's like
epoch.
a
It's
millennium later.
hmm
And I think that taking some time to actually explore what were these continents like during the Demonic Imperium is going to do wonders for us from a historical storytelling perspective. Because
I both agree and disagree. Well, no, go ahead. I'll wait.
no, I want to
I
hear.
agree
I
with
want to
you,
hear
and I'll
you.
disagree with you. It's just that here. So here's the thing,
Mm-hmm.
and we've already seen some rumblings about it. And I don't know if you've been looking at the chat, both in on our actual current discussion here, and also in our Discord, or even the other Discord where War of the Sun East is being run. But there's plans to create empires and alliances and betrayals that we hadn't considered happening, which is phenomenal. But we have right now currently an entire map set up for how things are supposed to be. And then we had all of our background stuff about like, here's what once was. We're looking at if we are running something that is in the once was times and our players are doing things that are going to drastically change things, we might not end up with a lot of the same stuff that we've put most of our time into working on. Because why would X place have lost all of their, I don't want to say too much and blow the head off the kettle, but there's a lot of things that if this place doesn't fall and doesn't go through this big ruination climactic issue, then why would we bother in having this thing now? Because if they weren't destroyed, I guess you could say that over time maybe they've evolved and decided to change their perspective on themselves. But it's a very different thing when you're playing with old toys that were just supposed to be background set dressings.
I think part of that is one, picking our time frame for the game carefully, because I plan to run this game much faster than War of the Sun is running. War of the Sun is running in parallel with Eye of the Academy, so a turn varies. We're like months into this. We're like 6 months into this, 4 months into this, something, and we're still on turn 5. We just started turn 5. War in the West is going to be, the goal is to do 1 month of game time in 1 week of real time, and for a set so 3 months of game time is 1 year. 3 months of real time is 1 year of game time because it's 12 weeks. So War in the West is probably going to run for a very limited slice of history. Because if we ran it for a whole year of real time, it would only be 4 years of history. And I feel like,
as we've seen, is kind of a drop in the bucket.
It's a drop in the bucket.
We do our time.
So as long as we pick where that slice occurs carefully, we can still have things evolve the way that we need them to evolve, whilst having the flexibility to incorporate player agency and let people leave their mark on the world.
Oh, I completely agree. I just think that even though it would be, quote unquote, 4 short years, as we've seen, especially when it comes to people being heroes. Now, of course, this is players taking over NPC factions that will be able to have a big impact on the world, obviously. But a lot can happen when when a very dedicated group of players, because they are still going to be players, even if they're not playing actual PC heroes. A lot can happen in a short amount of time, which could drastically change the landscape for good or for ill. And honestly, that's part of what makes Caches and Castles. It's
chaotic
it's the golden part about it. It's the chaotic self, and if there's not a little bit of scuff, then it's not.
Did it really happen?
So, did it really happen? Exactly.
Let me see if I can get. Nah, I'll work on that later. I'll do that later. So, no, I'll do it now. I'm going to share the map of the Western continents, because I know we're straying away from Irelec. First off, let me go back to your previous concern about holding on to core canon events, right? If we're talking about canon events. One of the things is in War of the Sun, some factions are not playable. I'm not letting people play as those factions. For example, Ioth Academy. I am running that faction. Other people don't have that. Because I need to be able to run that faction for a variety of reasons. The least of which is I don't want somebody screwing with the party just to screw with the party for non-story reasons, right?
Yeah.
But in War in the West, Irelec will not be playable. Irelec will be locked. You and I are going to control what Irelec does. And we reserve the right to do that wherever is necessary in order to preserve the timeline to a certain degree. Okay, let me actually share this crap. I want to talk a little bit about the different cult. I want to give examples of what we're talking about here. And to do that, I need to share application log for share.
Gorm brought up a good point about if things get absolutely ludicrously wild, we can always have the main and alternate timeline. And I don't mean actually having different universes, but history is usually written by the victors, or things, events could be changed in order to make sure it suits those who are in power. So it is very likely that even if things deviate to a point where we're not comfortable with it, We
Mhm.
can always obviously let it ride for the purpose of awesomeness, and then we can, if we need to tidy up some little bits of timeline stuff, we can always have it be said that, oh yeah, that was what was understood based off of previous information. However, it's been come to light that dinosaurs actually have feathers. Uh, so there's things that we can do to make needed changes, even on a soft or hard way.
Mhm.
I would see it more so as a historical errata than anything else.
Okay. Sharing the screen appears to be lagging me possibly, so I apologize if I'm not in sync right now. Deal with it.
Understandable. Have a nice day.
Just seeing if there's anything else I can do. But
Is that an
I would
art? You have one of every animal in there. Look at that.
Oh no, I was placing resource icons in War of the Sun. A
Ah,
faction searched, and it was Hamur, the Green Dragon tribe, and they were searching their territory for resources, and they found horses. And I decided, no, they're drakes instead of horses. So I put
oh
dinosaurs on the
my.
map. Mechanically the same, but flavored differently because it's cooler that way. So I would consider but that's not actually how it happened to be there's what am I thinking? There's degrees of satisfactory solutions. And that didn't happen retcon is like the least satisfying, right? So I think what'll happen is you and I will decide. We're the keepers of Anakra's lore. We're the keepers of the history. You and I will decide like what is and isn't canon, and what things need to be protected for the canon's sake. Which you
We're
know
gonna
me,
introduce canon events.
we kind of have to. To a certain degree, we have to. I love the organic player and story driven nature of Anakra as a living world. So whenever possible, I integrate that stuff. Um, so like my number one most satisfying solution is integrate it into the story. No, that actually happened. And my least satisfying answer is that didn't happen retcon, where there's no in-game explanation, that kind of thing. And then like, oh, that's what the stories say, but that's not what really happened, is like more satisfying than just nope, wishing it never happened. But unless it's really executed well, it can still be dissatisfying. So in any individual case, you and I will look at the event, look at like, does this harm the story? Does it harm the vibe? Let us take, for example, our good friend Bronx Kirby.
Yeah.
Bronx Kirby is in a quantum state of canon. 7-Elevens do not canonically exist in Anakra. Guns are not a thing in Anakra. Everything that happens with Bronx Kirby, I reserve the right to quarantine. That being said, people have been talking about Bronx Kirby and John Carmichael team ups. I feel like the most likely case is that John Carmichael is sent to be the canon police, to be like, look, you need to get this thing out of here. I don't want you. You don't have to arrest Bronx Kirby. You don't have to kill Bronx Kirby. Just get him off this world. Introduce him to the wonders of the multiverse. He'll do less damage like on Earth or whatever than here.
On Earth?
Yes, on Earth. And I make no
John could
promises.
try. From what I've heard, Bronze Kirby is absolutely nuts.
Yeah, I make no promises, but Bronx Kirby fits more in the Corianderverse than he does in Anakra.
Oh, absolutely.
So that there's a big fuzzy Schrodinger's box of canon there. I will deal with as much of it as I can, but I have that in case of emergency glass ready to go.
But it's not like Gianni showed up on Castles and Castles and was like, "I'm making a lore accurate character." They knew what they were doing. They're not going to be upset if it's like, yeah, this this weird, totally not copyright version of a Nintendo character that you went and GTA 5'd is not going to be a part of the universe officially. I'm sorry. Like, oh, okay, understandable. Like
Yeah, no,
I'm sure they'll be fine with that.
I know. It's just giving an example of like where those lines are, right?
Absolutely.
So
No, but you're right though. Go ahead.
no. Finish your thought.
You're right though. I think we do need to have some protected canon events that ensure that things go down not the way they should, because I think part of the
Mm-hmm.
glory of what we're doing is the fact that we're including the community so much in the not just storytelling but the actual history, which is
Mm-hmm.
phenomenal. Um, I think that as time goes on, especially considering the those who are supporting the channel and those who do love the lore and love taking part and being a part of an Ankara, if and when, I mean, like, the idea is when. It's just the if means how long it will take to get there.
Mm-hmm.
I think there is going to come a point though when we're going to have to kind of solidify what is going to be streamer canon and what is going to be, uh, you know, like lore
Published
wise book
canon.
canon. Because I
Yeah.
feel like
Yeah.
once we publish an Akra, it's going to be just like if you were looking at, books in Greyhawk Farron and whatnot. There is going to be a set lore that, for all intents and purposes, should very closely mirror what happened on stream.
Mm-hmm.
However, I think that there will be a definite streamed history and like, in print lore history, and it is going to differ probably fairly a bit. However, I think that what's going to happen is that the streamed history is going to vastly change what we do with our
Mm-hmm.
with our actual lore history, because it's going to be what people like. It's going to be what is enjoyable and what's fun, and we're going to want to make sure we bring that to Anakra going forward.
Mm-hmm.
But we will have to have some at least slight deviations,
In my
considering how deviant the community is.
in my head, it's always like, well, that's what happened, right? Like what happened on stream, that it actually happened. People did that, so that's what happened. I think the default
Yeah,
is always going to be to keep that history as like plan A default, and then breach from it where necessary.
yeah, oh, absolutely.
Um, the other thing is, so Matt and I have been talking since like 2006 about novels, about stories set in this world. They weren't set in this world originally, but it turns out they were set in this world all along. And those have specific storyline elements in them. And those are things that I consider canon targets, right? So if I ever want to write those books, I need to try to make sure that certain things are still possible, certain characters are still around, etc. Um, but I think the safest thing to do is what we're going to do, what we're talking about with War in the West, is we say, okay, there's this timeline. War in the West is going to start during the Demonic Imperium. And that means that you and I have as much of that time as we want to determine the state of affairs, right? Like we have narrative control over everything that happens from the dawn up until the start of War in the West. So we can set the groundwork. We can do things like there is strife between Bothotlo and Brontha. Here's your character pitch. Here's your lore pitch. Play according to, don't just play as a big game of Risk, play according to the story. So we can have these cultures where we want them, right? Like Cost. We've talked about Cost before. Cost is my cursor being captured. Yeah. Cost is going to end up being like this massive region here. And it is multiple cultures. It's a macro culture. It's huge. And it contains a lot of different subcultures within it. Kind of like Okarthal in the East, which is the name for all the dragon tribes. There's 10 dragon tribes. They're all very different from each other, but they have certain cultural elements in common. So Cost, the whole story behind Cost is rooted in the Demonic Imperium. So we are not going to start this until Cost is established the way we have it in mind. Because if the story of Cost is the story of people who were conquered, liberating themselves through a very specific binding with certain spirits, and that gives them their culture. If we ran that story as a campaign, as badass a story as that would make, there is no telling how that would turn out, right?
Yeah.
So
I would say that we have, depending on, even if you had one person each, or one group rather, taking over each one of the main factions, that's at least, 4 different ideas mixed off of how many people, because it'd be a lot for one person to run one entire, Costi faction. And so you have at least, 4, if not up to maybe 16 people, all with different ideas of how things go. And those ideas are going to be vastly different than what our ideas were. And while those ideas would all be valid and cool. There's a lot in the West and across Anakra that the cost
It's
needs to
writing
end up
on
in a
it.
certain place. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
we have long-term plans. So when we start War in the West, cost will already be that story will already be canon. That history will already be canon. But people, the five great houses of cost will be playable. At least four of them will be playable. And so
Yeah.
that is just representing. It's like when you play Crusader Kings and you're playing starting in 1400. It's like, here's the ruler that you're playing and you're part of this culture that has been going on for a long time and already has these things in place. And here's a slice of time during which you're going to rule over them. And Crusader Kings doesn't go until like 2700 with lasers and nukes and stuff. It's a slice of time. And that's what we're going to do. And I think that this is a great opportunity. I know you were talking about your concerns earlier about dredging up some of this history, but you see what I mean about like just making sure we start at a certain point where the things we need are already in place. And then we can leave a certain amount of it up. Go ahead.
Have you discussed what the sequel campaign is going to be when IOF does eventually come to a satisfactory close?
I have talked about it. Let me talk about it again. The sequel campaign is going to start out in the islands of Irelek, the Irelek Monastery, the Irelek temples. And not all of the cast, but some of the cast will be from there, raised there, effectively. It is going to be another story that starts out with damn teenagers ruining the, killing gods and stuff. That is probably where that is going to go. But this time, instead of all of them teaching at all of them learning at IOF Academy, some of them are going to, their origins are going to start out in Irelek, and then others are going to join along the way. I have not talked a whole lot about the overall plot line. I can tell you that it is going to have to do with the Great Empire of Sharan, which is the empire that is founded by the sovereign Sin himself in this desert region right here. So it's going to deal with Irelek. It's going to deal with Sharan. Mirik was supposed to be an important character in that story. I got his ass killed. That's another reason why I'm like, maybe we should put this closer in the timeline before any more of these effects echo out too much.
We're gonna kill our entire cast for this show.
Well, that's why like the Garnet situation needs to be dealt with either by getting her killed off, getting her set up in a situation where she can be like, I'm not going to go hunting down every single villain in the universe. I'm like, I have a city to run, or I'm now researching how to kill. Like, if she wants to sit there, if she's plotting to kill all the Void Wielders and all the Infernals, as long as she's like working on that as her project and not actively going after every single one, in like literally showing up at their house to beat them up, then that's fine. Because she would make an excellent character, like non-player character in that story based on her timeline.
Yeah.
Like,
we're not going to have enough badass older women who want to bring down the, patriarchy. We need to add one more to that list. We need it.
Joe, stop writing that character challenge. Impossible difficulty.
Look, I like meeting all versions of your mother when we play D&D. Okay, I've loved all of them equally.
Oh man. So that's one of the situations. Like, we need to resolve Garnet's story, or at least get it in a point where she can be cooking for a while.
Yeah,
that's like one of the things we need to get with, because a lot of the characters in IOF Academy, I can see either dying and leaving a legacy that exists by the time Irelek is there, or still being around when Irelek is still there. But yeah, I need to not be worried about them just being dead all the time. Either they're dead, or they stop trying to get themselves blown up.
Right. You could also pull she can't keep getting away with this thing where, she finally makes one too many packs that comes back to bite her in the patootie. And maybe it doesn't lead to death. Maybe it doesn't lead to a debuff in power. Maybe it leads to needing to sequester away in order to continue further in their goal, but not either have consequences, Half-life, full
No,
life
I
consequences.
mean, I've been building up a lot to consequences in the current storyline in Ioth Academy. And
Because
there's
and again, I'm going to say spoilers. Anybody who's here, spoilers for Ioth Academy. Spoilers. Mute yourself if you don't want to hear this. But wasn't there already a reveal where the kids, mostly Garnet, and I think there was maybe one or two extras, ended up finding out the big secret? That was a big deal when it ended up coming
that's
out.
also part of Irelek. That's really important to Irelek's story.
It is huge. That's what I'm saying. It's absolutely enormous. So it would make sense to where Garnet is in play going forward. But like you said, we need to make sure that Garnet is in play without taking over. Like, like when a lot of like usually inexperienced DMs will bring in like, oh, you guys are fighting really bad stuff. Let me bring in Gandalf. Let me bring in this giant, ludicrously powerful NPC. It's totally not me in this game who will save you and guide you through the adventure. And instead of it being like this big epic adventure where you might have someone to kind of help you out, it's mostly like just like D&D daycare, and you're getting to watch all these ludicrously powerful things fighting. We kind of, again, not to put you on blast, but we kind of had a lot of that when we did our first Irelek campaign, where we would have a bunch of those snot-nosed kids running around and meeting all of our old factions and characters and storyline, they'd be involved in these larger than life things, and they'd be like, hey, you guys fight the mooks while we take care of the big bads. And we want to make sure that on a stream show, we don't put the people who are going to be engaging with that through that,
Exactly. Because then it would be too much like Ioth Academy. And that's one of the reasons why I'm looking forward to the fact that Irelek is going to be a on the road, like a travel, instead of staying in one place, surrounded by high level archmages who, in order to preserve verisimilitude, really should be the ones dealing with all these interesting, cool, fun problems instead of the heroes. Yeah, so I think if we can get the point is that Garnet's storyline needs to stabilize to end.
Oh my gosh, you know
Academy. What?
I just realized you just said the answer as to why it's not happening. You know why all these crazy, ludicrously powerful archmages aren't going out doing all this stuff? Because in Anakra, if you leave your house, you die, and these kids aren't afraid of death.
That hasn't happened yet, though, to like almost anyone except who put it on mute, Ioth himself. But there's still time.
Well, there's been a lot of times where I don't get to watch Ioth Academy as often as I would really like to, but there's been a lot of times I've seen in chat people putting tons of either good energy, saying positive energy towards a very particular set of the supporting cast. I know that Elnau and
Untermaler,
Mr. Untermaler themselves have been on the chopping block, and it was very much like do or die in regards to losing two of the biggest players.
Elnau, Untermaler, and Alozarin all have chat armor.
So that's exactly.
They keep getting away with it. But anyways, because I brought so many Irelek related plot lines into Ioth Academy, we need to get to a point where like Garnet either has consequences of your actions or otherwise is no longer destroying everyone. There was a much better way of saying that I lost track of. But theoretically, because of the world tour nature of Irelek, they could go to Brontha, they could go to Onderud, like they could visit with, depending on where it is in the timeline and the destinies of these characters, they could absolutely meet the old guard. And I would love to have that happen because that shit is really cool. It just needs to be at a point where the old guard is like doing old guard things, running kingdoms, teaching. Yeah, they've moved on from active adventuring life. Or they're doing an adventure that isn't this adventure, right? That's the other option. It's like, I'm on my own quest. I can't solve your adventure for you, but I'm going to go off here and do this.
We are getting down into the last 9-10 minutes of our show, and we did very little outlining for the War of the Sun campaign. We did a lot of review. We did a lot of check-ins and kind of upcoming lore reveals, or just kind of saying where both Lunch and Lore and the Caches and Castles Wednesday evening shows are going to be going as time goes on. With the last little point of our show here, we had discussed how we wanted to do our format, and I think it'd be a good idea to make sure that we can at least start putting it out there. Aside from our news corner, sandwiches, taking audience questions, and then we would like to try to end out with a closer. If we devote about 5 minutes to each of those topics, that leaves us for 40 minutes to talk about our main topics. That come up over the course of what we're going to be discussing. What I would like us to do in this last little chunk is let's figure out what that last little closer is going to be as we
Mhm.
move forward. Because next time, I think we already have a lot set up to where we'll be able to talk more in depth about Earlek as that is necessary. I think we're going to be spending a lot of time talking about the War of the Sun and not just discussing how we're going to go about it, but we're actually going to be going. I would like us really to either start from top to bottom or bottom to top, or just pick a continent and then just select a region and just kind of start discussing that region. And we can start making sure that we take everything we've already outlined, like we did for Irlek, for all of these various regions and factions in War of the Sun West, and be able to start dropping them on the map and
So
come up with what exactly is there.
one of the things that War of the Sun has done for me is it's actually
Mhm.
fleshed out the world at this time,
Yes.
like, and that has been huge. That is, I made a list, and it was one of the things I was talking about going over. I made a list of possible playable realms for War in the West, aiming for around 60. And I think that by starting to tackle those, even if we just have like bare bones details, right? We know, like,
Yeah.
okay, let's put an Iron Empire here, and let's put this. Like, you start out by just sort of putting those things down, and then you start
Mhm.
thinking about them, and that starts to give you more cultural ideas, because every Iron Empire, every Iron Province has a story of how it was founded, and it's usually Uzul went to like some gigantic went to some warlord and was like, hey, do things my way and I'll make you a powerful ruler. And so there ends up being, or just shows up with an army of devils or whatever, but the story of how that happens is going to shape both the infernal and non-infernal cultures. For example, figuring out what's around cost is going to be really big in determining their culture, because somebody
Yeah.
who's fighting against designers and their machines is going to turn out with different stories and values than somebody whose main threat is Raveners, or someone whose main threat is from within by Imogen cults and stuff. So
Yes.
by doing what you described, I want to do this like big picture, sort of toggling back and forth. We started with Irlek, right? And we were doing kind of small picture. And then
Mhm.
we go back up and then get the big picture going, and then sort of fill in things. Oh, let's zoom in here, and then do a little bit
Yeah.
of work here, and then that's kind of how I feel like we're going to end up doing this. And by using the let's make 60 playable realms strategy, the necessity of filling out all the mechanical nonsense I need is going to inspire or give us seeds for doing a lot of this story work.
Okay. I am all about that. I completely agree. I can't promise anything. I'll try and sit down and see if I can come up with that list that you had already listed. We'll be able to start listing all the various factions we've come up with Bedora and Kiaz, so we can just kind of
Mm-hmm.
rapid fire go down and just go piece by piece. If we can, in 40 minutes of talk time next week, we can basically give 5-10 minutes to each region, and we'll be able to knock out between 4
Mm-hmm.
to 8 of them.
We don't
Average of
have, yeah,
six.
we don't have to get it all done, but
Oh no,
like,
of course not. No, we'll
if
we'll
we
start
use that
chunking it out.
checklist, yeah, I'm
Mhm.
glad that you see where I'm coming from on this, because it's not just more of Joe's 4X gaming nonsense. Like, this is a storytelling tool, right? This is a world building tool,
Exactly
and
that. I
it's
mean,
and
like,
it's
we're
my
able to
4X
knock
nonsense.
aside an hour for us to be able to do this. Now, of course, I'm gonna blame Chad a bit for this. There's a lot more sandwich, there's a lot more lunch in our session of lore than I was initially anticipating, and I love it. I think it's amazing. It's gonna save me a lot of time for having to worry about that. So that's fantastic. I will look into building an actual either camera setup to point at the sandwiches, or at least something that can rise them up to be in frame with me. I'll have to figure that out because I only have the one good camera. So we'll see what we can do there. But in the last few minutes that we have, I had an idea, Nate. We wanted a
Yeah, yeah,
closer.
yeah.
I'm thinking we start off with news, then sandwiches, then audience questions, and then main topics. My thought here is that instead of like a closer, because I really
Mm-hmm.
feel like a lot of times we kind of go up to the time when it comes to talking about lore. And I feel like we don't want to stop the lore jam just by saying, "Hey, let's finish off with some kind of arbitrary closer." So I think that our closer of sorts should be a catch-all to where if we missed anything from the beginning, like obviously we're going to do news. If something crazy important kind of comes up while we're on stream, we can kind of run back to that and go breaking news.
Mhm.
If your sandwich finally gets delivered at the end of the episode, you run off, grab your sandwich, and come back with it. Or if any audience questions slip through our fingers in the early portion of our show, we can kind of roll back to it at the end. But I feel like the catch-all shouldn't be a we have to do this. I think I like it as a did we miss anything in the beginning? Or did something random that has nothing to do with what we're talking about come up that is important to share? I think
Mhm.
that's where that final time slot should be if we end up using it. But I like the idea of having it be the net of our
Right.
program, you know?
So here's what I think. I think that we should do for news, it should be recent updates, things that have happened. But all the here's what's coming next, that shouldn't go at the front, that should go at the back. That should go at the end of the show, right? Like
Okay.
that's it's sort of like going forward, you have that ending momentum. So I think that we should move the preview of what's coming next to like the last 5 minutes. Maybe at 50 we do the catch-all grab bag parking lot stuff, and then at 55 we switch into like coming up.
Okay, coming up. I like it.
Yes.
I think we can reserve the catch-all though to spill into the main topics. Like if we don't have a need for a catch-all, we just keep talking until
It's
the
more
last
like
5
it's more like at 10 minutes to close we do a check-in, right?
Yeah.
And we just sort of be like, oh, the bell is coming. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that we need to do about? No. Are we still in the middle of the sauce? Yes. Okay, back to the sauce. Or we do the catch up. And then at 55, it's like
Love it.
Coming soon on Casters and Castles.
all that crap.
I love it.
Cool. I think I'm good. You good?
I'm good.
Yeah.
I have a lot of
think
sandwiches to eat.
yeah. I think I'm going to add chat to this. I know I don't always have chat on the screen. I think I'm going to add chat to this show format. I'm going to add the timer like I talked about. Will any of that be in place next week? I don't know. We'll see you next time, folks.